Hi, everybody. I am Stephanie Camillo, and I am the founder, director / only employee at Cocktails by Mail, which I founded last November after I was gin ambassador for Boutique Gin for a couple of years. And I'm going to give you kind of my quick learnings of how I set up the company and just some really important takeaways if you're also looking to set up your own RTD / online cocktail delivery company. So we're going to jump in. The first thing is recipe consideration. So just so you know, I'm not a microbiologist. This is your top line information only. And please make sure you do your own due diligence on safety and testing your products. One good place if you want to get any testing that I can recommend is Campden BRI, but there's lots of them out there. So recipe consideration. First things first. ABV. That's what you need to sort out because that's going to dictate a lot of your other things. So generally, this is a safety thing. Over 14.9% ABV, most of the bacteria will eventually die. So if you create something, there happens to be any bacteria from fruit or syrup, it should die. It's not going to be instantly, and that means that you could introduce pathogens if you're using unsanitary practices. Over 20%, pretty much nothing's going to survive. It's really hostile. Some places won't even test if it's over 20% because they just know it's going to be fine. Second thing to consider when you're doing a recipe is the size. So if you're over 14.9%, you're considered a spirit drink. And so then you have to adhere to the following trading standard sizes. So if it's under 100 mils, you can use whatever size you want. So 99 mils, that's fine. You ain't got no problems. But then it's 100, 200, 350, 500, 700, 1,000, 1,500, 1,750, 2,000. In between there, those are the only sizes you can do if you're over 14.9%. Above 2,000, you can pack in whatever you want. There's a lot of companies that aren't following this rule. Some say it's because they're going direct to the consumers. Others, I think, just don't even know, but it's a good consideration that you're aware of. And then the last one for recipe consideration is just your ingredients. So are you going to use fresh ingredients? So like fresh juices, fresh lime, fresh grapefruit, pasteurized juices, or acid alternatives, or some other alternative that's more shelf stable? Allergens. Are you going to use anything that's an allergen? Because then you risk cross-contamination, you're introducing it, you have to warn on all your labels. High-risk ingredients, things like dairy, eggs, oils, fats. Are you going to use any of those in your recipes? You know, you're going to do a bake and wash bourbon. It might get a little bit trickier for keeping everything safe. And then longevity of your flavors. So higher ABV tends to have a better preserving factor. Your flavors stay a bit fresher, but then you've got a really boozy cocktail. So just things to be aware of when you're deciding. And the last one is about scaling up. So for me, my recipes, it doesn't really matter how complicated I am because I make them, I do them all in-house. If you're looking to actually send this out and get it produced by a factory or an outsourcing it somewhere, and you want to scale up, you're going to have your recipe done by a food scientist because all the places that do canning and bottling, they won't just test or take your home recipe and do it. They want to have a food scientist. They know it's a safe product and you're working with certain ingredients. There's lots of laws about which additives can go in there that you can have fun going through EU laws versus UK laws. It's a minefield. So just some recipe considerations before you even get into the next bit. Okay, now your licensing requirements. So this is the part that's actually going to be what allows you to sell this stuff legally. Yay. So first thing is your premise license. Some of you, being a craft distiller, you may already have a premise license. Off-premise is likely what you'll have. Perhaps you'll have it on-premise. That would also let you do it. Those you have to apply through your council. But the key thing is it needs to be the point of dispatch. So if you are producing in warehouse 1, but you're sending everything out from warehouse 3, it's warehouse 3 that actually needs to have the premise license. So that's a little hiccup you might not catch. The next one that you have to have is a personal license. And this is because for your premise license, you must have a designated premise supervisor. Again, hopefully you already have somebody in-house with that, but if not, it's a course you have to take. Next one is your compounder's license. This is to be able to mix spirits with anything but water. You don't need this if you already have your rectifier's license, that supersedes it. But if you're new to this, you will need your compounder's license. It's pretty easy to get. You just fill out some forms and you send it in and they send it back to you. Next one to consider, and this one's is more of an optional one, is your AWRS license. So this one is the ability, it's going to let you wholesale to other businesses. If you're like me and you're just doing direct to consumer, you don't have to worry about it. But if you're thinking about, again, doing any kind of scaling up or doing distribution, you will need that one as well. And then the last one, and you'll need to check your counsel with this one, is whether or not you need to register as a food business. So I've registered as a food business. I've got my hygiene rating, my scorecard on the front door, but all the councils are different. So just check with your local council whether or not you will need to do that. Packaging. Are you going to in-house do all your production? Or are you going to outsource it? That's going to dictate what some of your options are, whether or not you can use cans or bottles that a company with a bottling line can easily fill, or using pouches like mine, which is really kind of tricky because no one's filling pouches like mine are. So that's your first thought. Second one, some of the options, I think, kind of your branding, there's going to be a lot that go into this, but are you going to do cans? Are you going to do bottles? Are you going to do plastic pouches? Are you going to do recyclable, compostable pouches, all those different options. So something to think about. And then the next one is your size of your cocktails. And this might actually limit some of your off-the-shelf options. A lot of people want to do really tiny cocktails in cans, like 75 mils, 100 mils. Those cans are pretty tricky to get a hold of. Even glass bottles, sometimes the size, the look, the shape, if you're going off the shelf, is just very tricky. Delivery is one you might not think about, but whatever you're putting your cocktails into, you have to deliver them. And that's going to change the cost of delivery. So if you're sending glass, you're going to need extra packaging material. You're going to need, it's probably going to cost more because it's going to weigh more. Cans, a bit more durable, but again, quite a certain size. The pouches can fit through. So just thinking ahead, because you're like, oh, this is beautiful, I'm going to use this bottle. And then you realize that they break really easy and they're a pain in the ass. And then the last one is your kind of outer packaging is boxes. So there's a huge cardboard shortage right now. I'm sure you guys have heard about this, but maybe not. Amazon basically owns the world's cardboard and it's hard to come by. So lead time is really long. Certain types of cardboard you can't get. Are you going to use custom boxes off the shelf? Is it recyclable? Is it not? Something else to think about with kind of your outer coatings, plastic tape, those types of things. And then the biggest one is how much will it protect your products? When I first started, I was using off-the-shelf boxes. I was having lots of breakages. I was trying to kind of go backwards and piecemeal things together. Ended up just getting custom boxes because that's what was going to work the best for me. But it's a bit of trial and error in that one. So it all is a bit circular, just got to think about all those things in connection before you land on how you're actually going to send your cocktails through. Delivery factors for your cocktails. Which courier are you going to use? Have fun. I'm sure you guys know this already with trying to deliver your delicious products. They're all terrible. They're all absolutely assholes who just suck because they all suck. None of them have to be good, but some of them are slightly better than others. The big thing is actually a lot of them won't actually even accept alcohol. So you have to figure out who's going to accept alcohol. Do you have to sign, I think DPD will give an exception if you sign a form, and there's different ways of you packaging and stuff like that. Royal Mail accepts up to 25% for certain things and 40% for others. So just check that they actually will deliver alcohol. Something else, where do they deliver? So, Royal Mail, I delivered some cocktails to the Shetland Islands the other week, which was pretty cool. They also deliver to Jersey and Guernsey really easy, whereas DPD doesn't. So just some more considerations on where you want to send your cocktails. The letterbox issue. So the UK has an average letterbox size, which is 254 millimeters by 38 millimeters, but not every letterbox is that size. So if you're going to try and do letterbox cocktails, that's kind of your average kind of size to work with. The tricky thing then is Royal Mail has something called large letter, which saves you on shipping, but that is a different size. So that one is 353 millimeters by 250 millimeters by 25 millimeters. So that's very tiny. I have one of my boxes is a Royal Mail large letter size. One of them is not, but they both fit through a letterbox. But I've ran into issues where people originally were like, oh, it doesn't fit through my letterbox. And it's because, those tiny old country homes, they're very tiny little ones. So they're not all going to fit. So just something to consider if you want to deal with that battle or not. Second thing, and this one is pretty important for your licensing actually, is signature and tracking, making sure that it gets delivered not to an underage person. So using track delivery, signature on delivery, which a lot of companies aren't using right now because of COVID. So it makes it a bit more leery. You know how people, Hermes especially, loves to just throw it over a fence and hope someone finds it. But just double check, that you can ensure someone 18 or over is receiving it. And then the cost. Seems obvious, but it really is a big factor, especially when you're working on smaller margins. So like when I send, one or two cocktails, the shipping can actually cost more sometimes than the cost of the cocktails to me, because it's a fixed cost and they just don't give you a great rate on everything. Second thing is just reliability. I found Royal Mail to be the most reliable, except for during that period of Christmas. For the most part, they always get there when they say they will. And then the last thing is just, will they compensate for loss or delivery of damaged goods? So Royal Mail has a very easy process that I've been able to claim back mostly everything for a lost or damaged parcel, where some of the other ones, it's so much of a hassle that you're never going to go through with it all, and you just kind of lose that money there. So it's all a bit of a balance. I feel like I'm saying I'm a Royal Mail fan. I'm not. I still think they're jerks, but they are the best and easiest to work with. Oh, and the last thing too, I guess, is just kind of environmental consideration of your delivery company. DPD says they offset. Royal Mail I like to use because they're working on existing routes. So I know that they're not driving a truck around for an extra route to get it to someone. They were already going to deliver the mail to either you or your neighbor anyway. So something else to think about. Yeah, that's everything for delivery. So the last bit is your labeling requirements. And this is important and just as important as all the other steps, but you don't even have to worry about your label till you have everything else figured out. So that's why it's here. So your labeling requirements. First thing is your ABV. It's got to be written in a specific format, and that's 0 or your number, percentage, and then followed by vol, V-O-L. So even I was making this mistake at first when I thought it was ABV, but it actually has to say vol. You're allowed to go out to 1 decimal place, and then you can precede the percentage with the word ALC, A-L-C period, or ABV, but it has to say vol at the end. There's certain font sizes you have to use, and that depends on how big your final cocktail is. There's some links that I can send over that have exactly what all that is. So that one's probably the most important thing that I see is wrong most often. The second one is going to be your size, and that needs to be written in mLs. It's optional to have the E estimate symbol. That's up to you. The next one is the legally compliant name. So anything over 15% is legally a spirit drink. So you need to have somewhere on your label that it's a spirit drink. And then the next bit is the fancy name. So that's your brand name or what the drink is, what you're calling it, a mojito, a purple old fashioned, whatever you're calling it, that's your fancy name. And then the key is that all of those things, all 4 of those things that I just said, have to be visible at the same time when you're looking at the label. So you can't have one on the back, one off to the side. Field of vision, all 4 of those have to be legal or visible. And then this has got to be on the durable packaging. So this has to be the thing that actually holds the liquid. This can't be on an outer piece of packaging either. So that's the biggest thing. But most of this actually, you guys probably already know because you're already bottling. So it's the same rules that you're already doing when you bottle your spirits, but just thought we'd go through it just in case you don't think it applies. Next bit is going to be your business name and address has got to be on there. Any allergens need to be on there along with the quantitative information. This is for things like licorice. And then any particular storage conditions, you need to put that on there. So those are your requirements, everything we've just spoke about. The next bit is actually all optional. So your place of origin is optional unless it's required. Makes no sense. But there's certain things that will trigger that. So if you say, it's a Russian Moscow Mule with Russian vodka, well, then you need to say that it was made in Russia. Otherwise, you're not allowed to do that. Units of alcohol is optional. You do not have to have on there. Nutritional information is optional, not needed. And then the drink aware is not needed as well. List of ingredients is not needed. That is an optional thing. And best before dates are only needed if it's under 10%. So if it's over 10% volume, you don't need to actually have a best before date as well. So that's everything on your labels that must be on there, or you could possibly put on there. And quickly, I'm just going to run you kind of through my journey with Cocktails by Mail because it's been both amazing and an absolute nightmare at the same time. But I think that's what startups are, especially when you're doing it by yourself. So when I started out with Cocktails by Mail, I was using plastic pouches, and that was, the easiest way to do it. It's just what I knew was available. But every time I made a plastic pouch and sent it out, I died a bit inside just because I know I was adding so much just bad stuff to the problem. So that's when I moved to the compostable pouches. Again, these are just off the shelf products. I was using just ready-made off the shelf letter boxes, compostable pouches. We tested them. They seemed great. They went for like 2 months, no problems. And then in February, suddenly they were just breaking. Couldn't figure out why. It was like an absolute mind. I couldn't figure out if, Royal Mail was squashing them, whatever. Turns out they were getting so cold. February, we had that really cold spell, and they were getting so cold, they were brittle and they were getting little punctures. So I had to quickly, piecemeal some packaging together and make it work. And it was tricky because I didn't want to go back to plastic, but I was having so much, like, just every day having to deal with customer service and I was sending them something that they weren't happy with. Thank God, most of the people were lovely. I think I had maybe 2 people who were actually just angry and nasty, but everyone really was understanding that I was new and I was figuring it out. And I think speaking to people like a real person helped. I didn't try to pretend I was a company or XYZ customer service. I was just like, I'm Steph, I own it, I make it, I'm sorry. But I knew at that point, I was like, I got to find a solution. So I started calling around, probably called 20, 25 different companies in the UK who can help me make compostable patches that'll work. Everyone was like, no, either you're too small of a company, we can't work with you, or it's just impossible. They were like, it's impossible, can't do it. And I was like, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. So I ended up finding a company abroad that was like, actually, I think that we can help. They are very flexible. Pouches, flexible, very flexible in what they can do. So they had a material that it's almost more than double the thickness of the pouches that I was originally using. It was still compostable. It had all the correct certification. Make sure you do your research on all this stuff about, what is the certification. So ours, you've got TUV, Austria was the compostable certification I knew it needed to have. And they were willing to work with me on the numbers. I didn't have to order 100,000 at a time to begin with. So got those. The process was like so exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. In the meantime is when I realized I'm going to get custom boxes. It's time to make that leap forward. Again, I found a great company. The guy just went out of his way to help me, found cardboard despite this massive shortage. I had to order 1 million boxes, and I'm only slightly exaggerating. But yeah, so that was like such a learning curve, and you think, oh, I wish I had just gone with it from the beginning, but I wouldn't have known. And I think, don't be afraid. And I have so many people say this, don't be afraid to iterate and change and just go with it. It doesn't have to be perfect at first. It's about learning and kind of growing and changing every day. So yeah, so I got those boxes, and everything since then has been just, actually the packaging has been the hardest bit. And now that is settled, it feels so much nicer, because I can focus my time back on, running the website, doing better customer service, making better, or not even making better drinks, just making more drinks and having more fun with them, and having, the time to really experiment. Everything I do in-house, which makes it really easy. I do all the labels myself, all the printed materials. I've got a great label supplier that can turn stuff around really quickly. Again, doesn't have super high volumes. Yeah, so it just makes it really nice for me. And I think because the way I've set it up, I can have a rotating menu. And this is maybe something to think about as well, is, if you're going to do something with cans or bottles with, big runs and you have to print stuff on, you're going to be more static, where you're going to have the same products for a long time. My whole thought always was, I'll have a couple core products, but it's like being in a bar, and we have seasonal menus. So I'm going to change the menu every probably 3 times a year, and then have kind of an experimental section with like different types of drinks and stuff that I can just pop on and off. So yeah, that's a bit about my journey and what Cocktails by Mail is.